Teach me to dad, I am a dad and I need some help. Teach me to dad, I'll never learn this by myself. Teach me to dad, I am a dad.
Here we are for another episode of Teach Me to Dad with Kurtis, and I'm that same Kurtis. Big episode here. So before I get into the intro, if you have been enjoying this, could you please rate this podcast, do the little star rating on whatever you're listening to. That'll really help get this to other Christian dads who would benefit from this. And I do want people to be able to hear from these different dads what they have to share with us. So if you could do that, rate that, I'd love that. That'd be important. This week, I'm chatting to Charles Cleworth. He's a friend of mine, and this is a very special episode. And I consider this a privilege of a conversation to have had, and I consider it a privilege for you that you get to hear it. And I do mean that. This is a deeply personal story, reflections, experience that Charles will share with us. And we're going to be talking about loss, death, grief. We're going to tell a story of his son, his little baby, Levi Cleworth, and it will be an honour to be able to hear and share that story. We recorded this a couple of months back around about Levi's birthday. And so this episode, it is like the others. It's two dads chatting about parenting, but I wouldn't call this one light listening. But this is an episode that's full of hope, perspective, wisdom, and the goodness of God. So this one will be about one particularly painful loss in his life, the loss of a baby boy. And so I know for some of you this will be very close to home. Maybe you're not in the headspace right now to listen to this, but I would recommend when you can to listen to this, because Charles has walked this journey with faith in a good God, and his testimony to that journey is a encouraging, comforting message. And to be honest, hearing from Charles, there's wisdom about grief that I've never heard or considered before. So this episode's longer than normal. So what I've done is I've split this into a part 1 and a part 2. This is a story I have no desire to rush through. So I've cut it into 2 episodes in case you need to pause. You just can't listen to it all in one sitting. So I've kind of split it at the best spot to pause if you want to do that, or you just run through both. But it's basically the first half is the story of Charles, Ash, their little boy Levi, and then the second part is asking some reflections, some questions to reflect on that process, how he parented through that, how he processed that. It's kind of the story and the reflections are the 2 parts. Lots of things could have chatted to about Charles, and obviously you'll see as the conversation goes, we naturally focus pretty much entirely on Levi and that journey. And so, yeah, like I said, I deem this one a privilege, so I want to get right into it. And so let's switch over and hear from Charles. Welcome, Teach Me to Dad. I'm pumped and privileged to be here with Charles Cleworth.
Yep. G'day.
Thanks for hustling together some time. Come
no,
chat.
It's good. Yeah, no, I'm keen to sit down and chat about being a dad and all of that. It is wild.
Yeah. So to kick things off, I thought I'd just draw a bit of a bridge from me to you, and then why I wanted to talk to you.
Yeah.
So we did Bible college together. So we did 4 years of that a couple of years ago, and so spent lots of time together. We in class together. We studied in subjects together. We would catch up with a crew of guys, and we'd read the Bible and we'd pray and we'd talk life together. So did real close for 4 years, and then finished college and dispersed to our various areas and ministries. And so that's been a couple of years. And so, was keen to chat to you particularly for a couple of reasons. One, just your uniqueness of person. And so keen to hear how you approach being a dad. Yeah, I think you're a person that intrigues me and impresses me Like in college, you were really smart, and that was impressive. And you were smart and diligent. But just as a person, I've just appreciated you a lot, and so I'm keen to hear how that comes out as a dad. Um, yeah, and then particularly that we'll dig into as we unpack. Like it was as we were finishing college, you and your family were entering and almost like about to enter a really hard time and were unsure, and there was a lot of up in the air, and so there was big loss straight out of college, and so that kind of happened after the years where we would sit down and talk all the time, and so I'm partly just as a friend keen to just talk a bit about that, but also just I got glimpses that made me realize you and Ash have tackled hardship in thoughtfully and with faith that I am interested in and think I'll be able to learn things from, even just learning from your experience. So, anyway, there's a few things that I'm keen for.
Cool.
So, kick us off, but tell us about your family. Who's your family? Who's in the team?
Yeah. So my wife, Ash, been married for 11 years. It's been wonderful. And then, yeah, so I find it hard when people are like, how many kids do you have? I immediately am kind of like put in the position where some of this hardship kind of comes
You're
up.
like, do I say 3? Do I say 4?
Yeah.
You think, yeah.
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 So, well, I mean, I'll start with Poppy.
Mm.
She's 6, so she's in year 1. She's a wonderful little girl. Another girl, Neve, she's 4.5. And the half is very important.
Why is the half important?
Every time she's like, Dad, I'm 4.5. And she sticks 4 fingers up and then she does a half finger because that's important to her. So I want to honor her by saying 4.5. And then Levi, he was the next. So yeah, he was born 2021. And his birthday is I know his birthday, I'm trying to work out the maths, is 8 days. So March 24.
Yeah.
He was born 2021.
Which, well, he'd be 3.
Yeah.
Coming up.
Yeah. And so, we can talk more about him, but he is with the Lord. And then Judah is number 4. And so, yeah, he's 7 months and we love having him around. So
let's go.
Yeah.
Champ. Well, look, there's lots that I'm keen to draw out. And so I feel happy to. I'm keen to do that journey.
Yeah.
So take us through it from as early as seems significant in the story of your family and Levi through to kind of present. What's been that journey?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of starting with Levi and that journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think had Poppy and Neve and, both of us keen for big family. And so we were, it was kind of, all right, we're pregnant with number 3. And that kind of just started all as it normally does. There was a few steps that I think kind of revealed to us that maybe some things weren't as they should be. And I think it was kind of that first scan. It was the first one, the dating 8 weeks. But then I think it was 12, 13 weeks. They said something slightly off. And they couldn't tell anything. But they said, look, there's a medium to high risk of something. And it was like 1 in 5,000. And so at that point we're going, okay, 1 in 5,000 is not huge. But I think that was the first stage we were like, something could be not normal.
Yeah. Did they know much at all? Were they?
No.
Did they say heart or just they didn't?
No,
didn't?
I think it was when they measured. They do all the measurements.
Yeah.
Something was not quite right.
Yeah.
I think it was something actually in the brain thickness. And so that they didn't know anything, but all they could say was something's slightly off.
Yeah.
Or could be.
Yep.
And I think we sat with that for a while. But then it was 18-week scans where they kind of do more of the kind of mapping out the what's going on inside the baby. And they got to the heart. So I wasn't there for this. This was in COVID. And so I wasn't allowed to be there. So Ash was by herself.
Wow.
Got to the heart. They actually, it was, Ash said it was a funny experience because they just like were checking things, and Ash was kind of wondering. And then, Ash said this person doing the kind of scan said, I need to go and get a doctor. Something's off. And so the thing they identified is that Levi's heart wasn't forming properly. And so heart has like 4 chambers, 2 upper chambers, 2 kind of bottom chambers. And he essentially didn't have one of the bottom chambers. And so, there are lots of heart conditions that people have. And this was like a pretty major one. And so I was able to go in and be with Ash after that. I remember the call. Ash called me, and it's a weird call.
Yeah.
When she says, something's off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what did they think at that point? So the first scan, they're like, 1 in 5,000.
Yeah.
Was this the point?
They're like, there is definitely a major problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So pretty quickly was, pointed in the direction of specialists and more scans. Early on, there was a decision about, did we want to terminate pregnancy? I think they said, they said it was a whole journey of what's going on. What does this mean for us? But it was pretty early on that they were like, most people would terminate.
Yeah, wow.
Would you want to do that? 90% would terminate.
Wow.
And so I think for us, with our Christian convictions, that wasn't a question. It was straight up, no. We're going to, we just didn't even ponder the thought of terminating. So, there would be more tricky things to come, but I think that was okay. Like we're sticking with this pregnancy. I think there was a question around what exactly is going on? Why is it going on? Are there other things going on? So lots of tests. And so I think Levi was actually the first, or one of the very first, to have like a super deep genetic testing. And so turns out
As in because that's kind of been recently available.
Yes. Yeah. Like it was like part of like a experimental study.
Oh, wow.
Very low risk, but just a new thing, new technology. So it turns out he had a genetic condition called Kabuki syndrome. Literally just one of the things in his DNA, his genes was just, and randomly, wasn't something in us. Just totally random. Kabuki syndrome is pretty rare. It affects a whole bunch of things, kind of physically and kind of cognitively. The most significant thing being his heart.
And so that would have been only halfway through pregnancy?
Yeah, this is probably 20 weeks.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what's that? That's a lot of pregnancy still from there. That's another 20 weeks.
Yeah.
What was that?
So the funny thing is that he was fine in the womb. No risk. Partly because he's kind of the mother's blood supply it just keeps everything working nicely. And so I think there was a period of kind of working out what's going on, and there was a time where we actually had some answers. Kabuki syndrome. He kind of was diagnosed with a form of what's called hyperplastic left heart syndrome, which was helpful for us to kind of go, okay, there's a name for this.
Why was that helpful?
I think, there were lots of questions around what is wrong, why, as in, like, to be honest, there was that question in the back of our heads: have we done something? And I think we got the answer: no. It was a random thing in his genetic sequence.
Gotcha. Prior to that thing, there's a cloud of mystery about it, which opens a lot of questions.
Yeah. So I think it was helpful to just go, it's how the Lord made this little fella.
Yeah.
Just from the moment of his very point of conception. It was just hardwired into him. And so I think there were some helpful things there. And kind of nice knowing that he was safe in the womb. So there weren't any question marks about pregnancy or anything. It was entirely normal.
Yeah.
For the pregnancy. There were questions, though, that we had to answer. So some of the peculiar things about his particular situation meant that there was no cure. This couldn't be fixed. And so they actually said he would essentially be dying from the moment he was born. And there were things that would be done, but they said if we did nothing, he'd pass away in 3-4 days. Yeah.
After birth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was just if we did.
Yeah.
Like gave more than normal care.
Yeah.
But with his own heart pumping, it'd.
Yeah. And so then they had. I remember you talking about there was almost like a series of things, and every one of them came with quite a high risk.
Yeah.
I remember in the pregnancy, it's like, well, they said they could do this and this and this, and they all have like a 50% chance, and it was still very, very high risk.
Yeah. So I think there was a chance that he could last longer than a few days. So in terms of like if you've got this condition, you've got these kinds of chances. Looking at him, he had a couple of other issues. His kidneys kind of were a bit, there were some issues there. They said for him, things aren't looking great. And so I think one of the key decisions for us was to do surgery. And so they can't fix it. Like there's no cure. What they could do would be to do open heart surgery in kind of the first few days.
Yeah.
And essentially kind of take apart his heart and try and put it back together.
Wow.
So there was a certain kind of risk involved there. But even then, it's like that doesn't fix it. And they don't know how long that would kind of give him. And so they said no matter what, his entire life is palliative care. Yeah. We're essentially caring for someone who's dying, even if it was 8 years or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that was a decision, do we do surgery? It's a tricky decision. We had friends who had a kid with a very similar condition. They decided they wouldn't do the open heart surgery, that they would just look after this baby, give it all the care that you normally would, and waited to see that baby passed away. We decided that we wanted to have every chance of showing this little baby love that we could. We asked the question if one of our other kids got sick, and it was like we could do something to help. It's like, would we do that for another kid? Yeah. And so we had to think about that. Do we do the surgery after birth? And we decided we would try and do it. Yeah. I mean, should I jump into the story of hitting birth?
Yeah, please. Like, there's lots in this that I want to go back and hear a bit about how you process. Like, it's just huge to process, but it would be good to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So everything was, we got transferred to kind of Westmead Hospital, just stacks of appointments. But a very normal pregnancy in terms of the pregnancy. Now he was induced because they needed to have all the right people in the room. So they had to kind of book it in.
Wow.
And he was born, and this was actually expected, but when he was born, he was fine. And so that was kind of strange, kind of being like, we know how much is wrong with this little baby in his heart. We didn't know he was a boy until he was born.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
We knew everything about him. Like, we didn't have it, but somebody had his genetic sequence.
Yeah.
But we didn't know whether this was a boy or a girl.
Wow.
But it was kind of strange going, this little boy is fine right now. Now he was kind of whipped off to kind of the kind of specialist kind of unit. I went with him. Ash, she kind of spent a little bit recovering.
Yep.
She was up walking in a few hours.
Wow.
To come and visit him. And yeah, I think he started okay. He started to struggle. So he was put on a ventilator, I think, in about a day. That was kind of expected. And we're kind of looking for, is there a point where we could maybe do some operation? Yeah. So we spent a lot of time just sitting with him. We had a few cuddles each. That was special and very strange. He had tubes and wires everywhere. And so it kind of felt like really strange, like just this little baby with wires coming out everywhere.
As you're talking, like, once we've hit this, I'm seeing the photos because you guys have shared photos.
Yeah.
From this. Yeah.
Now we stayed in hospital, and I think the whole time we're asking, how's he doing, and can we operate? And I think it got to the day before they were saying, look, this would be the time to operate, and basically just struggling. Yeah, his heart was just not kind of keeping up. Yeah, I hadn't cried a lot up until that moment, because I think there was always like this possibility, this hope that I'd have this boy for at least a while. There's a possibility.
Yeah.
And then I remember they told us, like, he's not gonna make it to the operation. And I cried. And so we decided to, he was dying, and so we took him off the ventilator, unplugged things, and we held him. We sung to him. We sung Jesus Loves Me. I baptized him. Yeah, and he died. Um, yeah, it's a strange thing to see one of your kids die.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, brother. Yeah. I Oh, we think about your little boy all the time. Talking about him a lot in our house. Um, it's just huge. Like even like we're recording at your church in Sydney. I've only been here once before. It's for Levi's. Yeah. It's yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So um well, so I'm look, there's that is a just a deep loss. Like such a loss. Like nothing else. And so there is lots that I'm really keen to hear about. Like I'm
Mm.
keen to hear about um I'm keen to hear about how you personally processed, and
Mm.
then I'm also kind of keen to hear how you as a family
Mm.
have responded
Yeah.
and coped with it together.
Yeah.
So maybe that'd be a kind of an order to think about.